Good afternoon and welcome to Talk HR. As always, I'm Simon Geere, and when I'm not doing this, I am helping HR directors, CEOs and MDs find the best HR talent in the southeast of the UK. And today, I'm joined by a gentleman I've known a very long time, since 2007, I think we worked out. This is Peter Hogg, and he's the Director of Talent Acquisition for the Middle East and Africa at Schneider Electric. Peter's back from Dubai, where he's relocated about a year ago. Am I right?
Almost to the day, yeah.
Is it really? There you go.
It's tomorrow. Year tomorrow.
Is it really? Who knew? And you've obviously, I know you flew back recently, and you've had to spend some time at home, obviously, as you come back to the UK for your summer holidays and some work. But thank you for taking the time to join us today from your offices down in Worthing. Very lovely grounds.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Simon. So I've just come out of 2 weeks quarantine. Now they let me into the office, but I have to wear a face mask in the office, so I come outside so I can talk to you unencumbered.
Excellent. Thank you very much. But you wore it well, I'd like to point out. But it's nice to talk to you under these circumstances. So, I mean, just for the benefit of people listening, I've known Peter since 2007. And the reason Peter remains really a very important person, I think, in the market and in my network, is Peter was the first person from an agency recruitment background, like myself, I suppose, that we saw cross over to an in-house role. So back in 2007 and 8, that was very unheard of. You know, people had to have in-house recruitment experience or come up through that traditional HR route into that kind of role. And we found an HR director, an American chap actually, was very, open. He really liked Peter and thought, no, let's go with this. And obviously we've seen Peter's career, go into significant ascension across some really well-known global organizations in the engineering and the technology space. And that's really why we want to spend some time today, is just to talk through Peter's career journey and his approach to talent acquisition today in 2020. So with no further ado, Peter, thank you for joining us. And if you could give us a bit of a career rundown as to where it all started for you from an internal talent acquisition perspective.
Well, thank you, Simon, for the introduction. I'll try and keep it brief. So just for those listening, Simon has just been a fantastic advocate through my career, and it was great that we met when we did. And we've stayed in close contact ever since. You got me that one really important job. Who knows? Maybe you'll get me another one in the future. But for the time being, that's the only one so far. So I started my career agency recruiting. Worked in Hayes in the construction engineering sector. I did that for just over a year and a half, and decided that I wanted to, quite honestly, chase the money. As recruiters often do, or certainly that was the way I was wired at the time. And I made the jump to a company that I knew a little bit from a friend of mine in the investment banking sector, hoping that was where I was going to make my fortune. The problem was that was in 2007. And for anyone with a good memory, they'll know that wasn't a good time to be in investment banking. And in fact, some of the key customers of that particular recruitment agency were the likes of Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, banks who we remember as having failed back then. And it was a tough time. It was a really tough time. It was a year that I spent in an organization where I questioned whether I was good at my job. I questioned whether I was going to be able to pay the bills. I'd recently got married. I bought my first house in 2007. It was all happening. And honestly, it was a very difficult time for me in my career. And I knew that something had to happen. And I looked at various options. I'd recently moved to a new town, and I wondered whether I might just go and work for a local agency, perhaps in a sector that I was more familiar with, back in maybe construction or engineering, that was a little safer. Not a lot safer back then, but a little bit safer. And then I met Simon, and he presented an opportunity actually quite late into my search at a company called Black & Veatch, who are a very large engineering and construction organization, primarily focusing on the water sector here in the UK, but many other sectors elsewhere. And I immediately got excited about it and went for a few interviews, and the rest is history. But that was my first step in-house. And I'd learned so much from being located with a HR team, working with a recruitment manager who was, I guess, from a similar background to myself, but being embedded within a HR team, I just found it really interesting. But what was really important to me then, and I think I recognized back then, was the value of having come from the agency side. Just really important to understand how agency recruitment works and to think and work like an agency recruiter. And I felt that actually was a differentiator for me within that team, and something which I felt really important to hold on to. And I still describe myself today as a recruitment leader with an agency background, albeit, I'm nearly 15 years in the industry and only 2.5 of those were in agency. But they were so important, and so much of what I learned back then I still rely on today. Then through McDonald's, again, first time I worked with a peer group of recruiters, where before I kind of was, there were 2 of us and then 1 of us. Going to Mott's, it was great to work with some really strong recruitment leaders, recruitment managers in each of the businesses there, and I still hold those guys in really high regard, and learnt a lot from them. But again, I moved on because a great opportunity came up at Doosan Power Systems, which was just 5 minutes from my house in Crawley. And so I made the move to Doosan, worked for a fantastic manager, Di Rysdale, for just 3 months. I know you know Di very well, Simon, and worked for her for just 3 months because shortly after joining, she announced her resignation. And at the time, I remember thinking, I'd taken a promotion into that role at Doosan, but I remember thinking, if they offer me her job, I'm going to feel really inadequate. But if they recruit over me, I'm going to feel really disappointed. It was a really strange. If they'd recruited another manager, I'd have been very happy with that, very comfortable.
Sure.
But also a little bit disappointed. And honestly, I was very surprised when I was offered the job just straight to replace her. And it was a massive promotion at the time, really big promotion. And I remember thanking the director of HR at Doosan when he made me the offer, and I remember him saying, "Oh no, don't thank me."
The nervous handshake and good luck sort of moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very much a don't thank me. We'll make sure that we get our money's worth. But learnt a lot in that role. Had some really great times at Doosan. A lot of respect for the way that they do recruitment. It's a very dynamic business. I'm sure it still is. It was a long time since I was there, but a good blend of design and consulting engineering, full EPC as well as the volume on-site sort of recruitment, which was really exciting, and a really positive approach to early career as well, which I learnt at Doosan. But the time was right for me to move on again, and I followed Di Rysdale again. She had found she'd popped up at a company called Invensys and was getting ready to move on, and I'd stayed closely networked with her and basically filled her shoes for the second time, which is why I always keep a very close eye on what Di's doing in her career.
Important point.
Yeah. And so I took the role leading talent acquisition at a company called Invensys for Middle East and Africa, Europe, Middle East, Africa, which wasn't a huge scope, but quite a large geography. We recruited across Russia, Kazakhstan, Germany, Sweden, Netherlands, Italy, all sorts of places that I hadn't recruited in before, which was really interesting. But I knew when I joined Invensys that they'd already been acquired by Schneider Electric, and it was just a matter of time for them to be integrated. And so my role went from EMEA lead to UKI lead, which was might seem like a step back, but it wasn't, because talent acquisition in Invensys was far more mature than it was in Schneider at the time. Schneider was just kind of setting out on that journey in 2014 to develop a proper in-house talent acquisition function. So for me, again, it was kind of a new frontier, and I had the opportunity to develop that team. And we built a team at Schneider Electric in the UK that I felt very proud of. I don't take all the credit. The team were outstanding, but we won some awards. Best Technology Recruitment Award at the Inhouse Recruitment Awards, we won twice. We won awards for diversity and inclusion. We won awards for our early career programs, both graduate and apprenticeship. Again, all credit to the team members of of mine that were working particularly in those areas. I don't try and take the credit for all of that, but I had the pleasure of leading that team. And I think what really, one of the guiding principles that I stood by was to remember what within a HR function that we found ourselves in as in-house recruiters, what unique skill we have in talent acquisition. That skill of sourcing, that skill of really understanding the talent market, really able to influence the hiring decisions, to really drive agendas like employer branding, for example, EVP, really help the business understand the value of diversity. And for me, keeping that front and center as our unique skill, as well as market knowledge, commercial market knowledge, the ability to recruit, to close candidates. For me, when you package that all up, it's a really high value add, unique skill that recruiters have. And I get the sense that there is a risk that in some organizations, even in the organizations I've worked for sure, there is a tendency to perhaps even try and dilute that a little bit into HR. And for me, I found myself standing firm and really trying to demonstrate what that unique value was. And I'm pleased to say that played well for me in my career, for sure.
Excellent. And it's good to hear you talk about your journey from what was, a transactional, operational talent acquisition role where you took that mindset from agency in-house and shone I'm still a firm believer in that. If I was recruiting recruiters for my own organization, the pace, the hunger, the relationship management skills that you gain in agency recruitment are just, I think, almost second to none as a training ground for an awful lot of corporate positions, and you clearly proved that. But how did you make that step up? When you, like Schneider's a good example, some of the work I've seen from you there, when the EVP pieces, the videos you've made to attract people to the organization. I mean, they were on a par with some of the really big businesses that we all know globally. Your IBMs. I remember seeing some of that, the work you did, and thinking, yeah, that's going to put Schneider's talent acquisition on the map. And sure enough, you did win awards, as did you and your team won awards. So well done to all of you. But how did that begin? Because I'm sure you landed first day at Invensys and thought, right, here I am. Where do I start? Kind of moment.
Yeah. Look, I should just come back to one of the earlier points you made, Simon, and say, look, when I was recruiting for recruiters at Doosan, I remember distinctly concluding that to succeed in in-house recruitment, or to succeed in my team at Doosan, I really needed someone with in-house experience. I needed to hire someone from another in-house team. I'd convinced myself of that. And that's the way I went about my recruitment, and certainly in the beginning at Doosan, and successfully. I mean, I'm very happy with all the hires I made, in case any of them are listening right now. But what I learned at Schneider, having stepped across to Schneider and maybe matured a little bit in my stance as a recruitment leader, but also, TA did a lot of maturing as well as an industry, is that actually the recruiters I now look for ideally come from an agency, and ideally directly from an agency, because for all the reasons you just outlined. There are great in-house recruiters out there. I'm not saying I wouldn't hire someone who came from an in-house team, but for me, we got to a point where we had that maturity within the team to stakeholder manage, to develop our processes, stakeholder manage in the in-house sense as opposed to the agency sense. We had our processes set up, we had our credibility. We kind of didn't need that anymore. What we needed was real TA efficiency, real recruiting efficiency, with people who were bright enough to step into that in-house mindset. Not that, how can I put? I hope I'm not suggesting that people who are not in-house are not bright enough. That's not the point I'm making at all. Maybe edit that bit. But people who could have that business acumen and who want to develop a relationship with one customer. And I guess then to your second point, how did we do some of the stuff that we did? Well, look, you're very complimentary. I'm sure it wasn't all that great. We certainly didn't have any big budgets. we had to fight for every penny, and we had to be quite innovative about how we did what we did. But it was all about creating value for the business. So if you take the employer branding, for example, it was all about focusing on that because we knew it created value for the business in terms of the talent that we could attract. So we had to go for it. And if you look at early career, for example, a lot of companies find it very difficult in that first year to really start to invest in university or internship or apprenticeship hiring. In year 2, 3, 4, it gets easy. In fact, it gets easier with every year that goes by because the investment is there, the business case is there, the prior budget is already there, the success cases are there. But in the early years, everyone knows it makes sense hypothetically, but it's very difficult to make that investment. I guess for me, in working with the strong teams I was working with, both from a HR and TA point of view, we were able to make those cases because we knew it was the right thing for the business. I think also, though, the philosophy and culture of Schneider was very helpful, particularly around learning every day, around pushing the boundaries, around best in class. These are sort of values that we live by at Schneider. That despite necessarily having all the track record or the budget, we tried to live up to those values, and hopefully we did that.
Excellent. So one of the things that always astounds me, because I've lived in my TA bubble for 18 years, I think it is now, looking after the Southeast from an HR perspective, but you've had to really reach out globally to find very, very technical skill sets through your teams, through your network, through your the employer branding piece that you do. How do you go about cracking those global markets when you don't know them? You arrive in an organization and you find you work out what they do, but how do you find those people when they're all around the world?
That's a really good question. I think, look, let's not underestimate the value of the brand. I think going to market as an agency recruiter is actually a lot more difficult than going to market as an in-house recruiter. Just wearing the Schneider badge will open a lot of doors, or opening the badge of any well-known corporate within any given market will definitely go a long way to opening doors for the recruiters. So let's be clear about that. It doesn't make it easy, but it's definitely easier. I think also a lot of what we do is very, very niche. So, I remember looking at stats when I was in my UK role a couple of years ago. If we hired 750 people in the year, we might have 300 unique hiring managers. So we weren't doing any volume for any given hiring manager. It's not like we recruited 100 of one profile and 50 of another. Almost everything was a one-off. So I guess you kind of go to market with that generalist mindset. We're not specialists of any particular talent market as in-house recruiters. What we're specialists of is the Schneider Electric value proposition and our employer brand. And we get very good at selling that. And couple that with good agency sourcing techniques, and we're able to get into those markets. But the key is being able to sell our proposition, for sure. And that comes back to the unique value, I think, of recruiter versus HR.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah, you do have that opportunity to really get under the skin and talk passionately about the place that you work, which, from an agency perspective, you could try and get close to that, but you never do as good a job, unless you are, walking that mile. I completely agree. So in terms of your responsibilities now then, because you've relocated your whole family, best part of a year ago, to the other side of the world. Congratulations on that promotion, obviously, but what geographical areas do you look after now, and what are the biggest challenges in the market that you're facing currently?
Well, that's another good question. So I currently look after over 70 countries across all Middle East Africa. We're about 7,000 people across that territory, and in a typical year, we'll recruit about 1,000 people. So very dispersed, culturally very diverse. From a country maturity level, both in terms of, I guess, development, but also in terms of Schneider presence, very much varying. Some countries with large teams, some very small. We even recruit within our region. We have the Caribbean islands, for example, where things are very different again. So it's a really diverse region, and perhaps I underestimated just how culturally diverse it was and what a learning curve it was going to be, for sure. And it definitely took me a while to settle in and bed into this role. I think if my boss are on the call right now, I'm going to say he and she, because I kind of have two bosses right now. I think they would both agree with that. But a year in, I'm definitely feeling a lot more settled. Look, this maybe I can start off by answering the question by giving a little bit of advice. Schneider Electric is a fantastic company, and I really enjoyed the first 4.5 years of my role in the UK. In fact, I enjoyed all of it, but I had a very real mindset shift 4 years into that role. Perhaps that was even too late. Some might say that really often people will start to feel that way after 3 years, but I started to feel that way after 4 years, where I felt like I'd taken the function from a very low baseline to something that I was very proud of. We tackled the challenges, continued to, but tackled the challenges around employer brand diversity and inclusion, employer value proposition, structuring the team, sourcing capability within the team, as well as business partnering, all the challenges that we have when we set ourselves up. We kind of solved a lot of those things to a degree. And I was thinking, where's the development? I got to that point where I just needed the next challenge. The great thing about the culture at Schneider is that we can be very open about this feeling of looking for something else. And I could say to my boss, look, I love my job. I have no problem getting out of bed in the morning, but I want to be very clear with you. I'm going to do this for another 6 months, and then I'm going to do something else. Not having a clue what that something else was, but just saying that I'm going to do something else, and it would be amazing if that was in the company. And if it's not, well, it's been fun, and it's time to move on. And I kind of took that to my manager, not as a threat. Arguably, it was quite a risky thing to do, but I just knew that the time was right, and I'm pleased to say that I developed a confidence somehow that I could have that conversation. It took a long time to build. I don't think that comes naturally to me, because I'm the kind of person who I don't know. I have a lot of reliance on the company I work for to pay my mortgage and to feed my kids, and I'm not one to necessarily rock the boat too much. But I found that confidence. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit later. But I found that confidence, and I was able to have that conversation, not knowing where it would take me. And I looked at a couple of jobs internally, but the opportunity in Dubai was mentioned, and I said, well, look, I'm up for it. But honestly, between us, when I said I was up for it, I wasn't sure if I was up for it. I didn't know if I'd actually go to Dubai, but I'd made a bold statement. I kind of needed to back it up.
Sure.
And when they said, would you be open to mobility? And I'd said yes. And then they said Dubai, I had to sort of take a deep breath and say, well, I said I was open to mobility. So, at that point, I didn't actually think anything would happen, honestly.
Right.
But the opportunity came up. The rest is history. I got the job, and I guess the point I want to make is that it wasn't in my character to even consider relocation outside the UK. It kind of happened overnight, but all the planets aligned. I kind of developed this confidence. I was ready to move on. I wanted to get a promotion to better my circumstances. Relationships with family and age of kids had all kind of got to a point where we could do something. And this came up, and we grabbed it. And every time I went for an interview, I'd say to my wife, "Are we doing this? Am I going for this? Because things are starting to get quite serious now." And she'd say, "Yeah, sure, go for it." Until the offer came, and that's a moment that I'll never forget.
Well, it's a huge life-changing moment. But yeah, how was it when you got the offer? What happened?
Well, I remember I actually was on a day's leave, and I was clearing out my garage of really glamorous things to be doing, And the offer came, and I was honestly, probably for the first time in my life, I was kind of speechless. And I said to my boss, my new boss, and who'd called me up, I said, "Look, I just need to take a moment to speak to my wife." And we looked at each other, and we just knew it was going to happen. So I called back and I accepted the job. And she said to me, my new boss said to me, "Look, if you accept the job, I need you in Singapore next week to meet the team." So kind of just all happened immediately. I got the job offer, I booked a flight, I was off to Singapore, I met the team, and then I was kind of starting to induct into the role very, very quickly.
That's amazing. So it happened really quickly from the moment you got the job, you were out there. Oh, superb.
Yeah.
That's a great story. So, well, let's back to this confidence piece then, because, and I'm not quite sure if I've got the right end of the stick here, but because I've known you a long time, and I can remember talking to a gentleman, Ed, that hired you at Black and Veatch, and I distinctly remember our conversation. He said he's got great confidence in what he knows and his abilities, but he's also been very, very open about wanting to learn and work with us in HR. And he said, and that was it for me. He said, I really rate this guy. I want to offer him the job. And I obviously was delighted, first, one, for you, and secondly, for me, because I get paid. So, but you've never struck me as someone that doubted yourself. Is that fair to say?
I think I'm quite a confident person, and I think Ed's assessment probably was about right. But when it comes to matters of security, maybe it's because of the way I'm brought up, but when it comes to matters of security, I can be quite conservative, I think. So I'll be very confident with a leadership team. I'll be very happy to speak my mind. I'll speak in front of groups of people. I'll give candidates both good and bad news, whatever it takes. But when it comes to paying the mortgage, I'll be quite conservative. And the prospect of going to my employer and saying I'm thinking of leaving without anywhere to go is that's just not where I'm coming from at all. So my wife is a stay-home mum. I've got 5 kids between the ages of 2 and 11. That's all on me. Everyone's got different circumstances, but that's just something that I could very easily be kept awake at night by. So yeah, from that security point of view, that sort of basic needs point of view, it did take a while to get that security and that confidence. But you know what? How I developed it was, and I would recommend this to anyone in who's in a similar situation. It all came through my external network. I spent a lot of time and invested a lot of effort in developing an external network. So I knew that what I was doing was industry standard. No one could tell me it wasn't. The people in my team or stakeholders in my business who would maybe push back on things, I'm sure rightly so, nearly all the time. But I kind of had this confidence that, look, what I'm doing, the agenda I'm pushing, what I think is important, it's not just me, this is the industry standard. And I kind of know what best in class looks like. Maybe not because I am best in class, but because I spend quite a lot of time talking to people who are best in class. And I got to a point where I felt like I could be a peer in that community. And when I felt like I could be a real peer or player in that community, and I don't want to sound arrogant here, I hope I don't, but when I felt like I could be a peer in that community, then the confidence just happened. I felt like I can do what I do at Schneider Electric, I can do it somewhere else. And what's most important at this point is that I keep learning. And really, that was a key moment for me.
That's excellent. So what, on that, but staying with that, what perhaps some of the people listening to this, maybe their roles are at risk in the current market, or maybe not, but they're just looking to make that jump to the next position. What advice would you give them to, as you say, to become known in that network? What did you do that made you realize what you were doing was industry standard?
It's actually not that difficult. There's lots of great companies out there who run events and build networks in the in-house recruitment space. I don't need to say who they are. They're very, very visible. I'm sure everyone knows who they are. But if anyone wants to ask me, I'll tell you who they are. And really just start attending some of these events, get to know the people. For me, something else happened. I was a relatively junior manager. I'd been doing my role for a relatively short period of time at Schneider, and I was at a team meeting I think I was in Barcelona with my peer group and my boss. My peer group from around Europe. I'm the UK guy, all the other European heads. And we were talking to LinkedIn about Talent Connect that year. And there was a suggestion that Schneider Electric might get a speaking slot at Talent Connect, and we were talking about, well, who might take that slot? And almost, imagine we're all sort of surrounding a speakerphone in the middle of this table with LinkedIn on the end of it, and my peers just looked at me and they said, "Oh, people do that." Um, and I thought, wow, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I had no idea what I'd talk about. Long story short, I didn't speak at Talent Connect. The opportunity went to someone far more senior than I, not in the European team, from somewhere else. But I had to pitch to speak at Talent Connect. I had to pitch a presentation to LinkedIn that I would give. It was the first time I'd ever done any external speaking, or would have been, and I guess Talent Connect was probably too big a stage, which is maybe why I didn't get to do it, and that's all good. But I remember saying to my boss, well, look, I've kind of been nominated as this guy who's going to speak on behalf of the company at LinkedIn, and what do you want me to talk about? And I remember vividly, he said to me, Peter, I'm not going to set your agenda. I can't tell you what you're going to talk about. You're going to have to come up with that yourself. I know we sat around a table and we kind of nominated you, but this is, you kind of got to speak from the heart. You've got to speak about what you've done, what you care about, what you believe in. And that kind of, again, was another key moment for me, because I had to think, well, what do I do well? What do we do well as an organization? What do we do well as a team? What do I believe in? What do I want to talk about? And ever since then, I'm always thinking, maybe this speaks to some of the achievements we had as well. I'm always thinking, what can we do which is noteworthy? What can we do which is industry standard, that if I were to stand on a stage and talk about, would actually capture the attention of an audience of peers, right? And I try and live that way in the way I do talent acquisition now. I try and think, well, if asked to speak tomorrow, and I've done a little bit of speaking in Dubai, asked to speak tomorrow, what would it be I would talk about? Am I doing something noteworthy enough today? And that's just something I like to use to challenge myself a little bit.
That's a great thing to live by, isn't it? It's just, and it makes you push yourself and look for what's next. So, and I've not seen you speak publicly at one of these events. So you're on my list. I remember talking to, so again, I won't name them, but a very well-known talent acquisition leader from a very large technology business, and we were just in a coffee shop on London Bridge talking about who we knew in the industry. And I remember your name coming up, Peter, and he said, "Oh, I know that chap from Schneider." And he said, "Yeah, it's interesting." He said, "What he's doing seems a long way ahead of what necessarily you'd expect of that business." And I can remember meeting you and telling you, and the thing I love best was you said, well, he's wrong, because Schneider are a fantastic global business in the space. And you were this great, you immediately came back and started arguing with him despite him not being in the room. And I thought that was fantastic. But, it did go to show there was a lot of respect, and you were becoming known in the industry even then. And that was a few years back.
Yeah.
But moving onwards. So talent acquisition of today, it's a phrase you used before we started recording. I guess that's the obvious point to draw this to a close, is what's on your list of things you want to achieve next? What changes do you think you'll make to how you go about talent acquisition, and you and your team across the many countries you're working in? How are you going to pivot based on what's happened in the world this year and what you think will happen in the world next year?
Wow, that's I'm not prepared for that question at all.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not prepared for that at all. I think efficiency has to come into it. You mentioned, the very sad circumstance of many in our industry right now who will be rationalised into unemployment, which is a great shame, and I hope the industry bounces back very, very quickly. I'm sure it will. But we need to think very, for my team, I've got countries in my scope that are very high cost. Dubai is a very expensive place to do business. I've got countries in my scope that are very low cost. Some countries you might think, as a Brit, as I did, are low cost. You might think are low cost, actually are not low cost at all. But within my scope, there are some that are low cost. And so I'm now in this position where I've got to think about where to position my talent. Within my team, I've got to play the balance between local support and kind of hub support, which is something we're looking at in my team right now. And I've developed a few more people within my team in Egypt, which is one of these great countries that is slightly lower cost with just a really strong skills base. So I've got to try and play that dynamic a little bit. For any of my team that are listening, I'm convinced that we do need a local presence, so they're all fine. But we're trying to build some additional horsepower in some of these more hub orientated locations. We have a new tool at Schneider, which I want to speak about very briefly. It's a tool we call Open Talent Market, which has been is being and will be a real game changer for our business. It basically is a tool where employees will have their own profile. and there'll be a variety of opportunities within open talent market. So internal vacancies, but also mentoring opportunities, and what we call short-term projects. You could call them gigs. Basically, something that would take up 10 to 15% of your time that you wouldn't be paid for. You'd kind of do it on the side. And the reason you might want to take up one of those projects is because you either have spare capacity, very few people are in that position, or you want to make an investment in your career. And the tool is backed up by artificial intelligence that will match employees' profiles to projects or jobs, and they'll match projects and jobs to people's profiles. I think that's going to have a massive impact on the way we do business, because we're going to really be upskilling our people in functions and jobs that they've not done before through good quality exposure to those networks and those leaders, but also the experience that they'll gain from that. I think it's going to increase engagement, and I think a part of our role, which is something I've never even contemplated before we started talking about this new tool, is that we as recruiters are going to pay as much attention to our internal talent market as we are to our external talent market. And we've very much shifted and changed our policies to empower our recruiters to source from within, which is something I know in a lot of, I'm going to say nearly every in-house, in nearly every company is very much taboo. It's something which is not done. So we're gonna be in a similar position to any external recruiter when it comes to our own talent, which is very, very exciting. I think we got our early career programs, grads and apprentices, up to a good level of maturity in the UK. We've got a lot of work to do in our early talent programs in Middle East Africa, so that's something I'm spending a lot of time on at the moment. We're taking the big, because you've got to remember that Middle East Africa is not as mature as a market as UK and Ireland. So we're taking all of our hiring managers through a program that we call License to Hire. So we're upskilling our hiring managers to be able to do better quality interviews, to obviously remove bias, and really be in a position to take calculated risks on talent, which we know we're going to have to do in the new market, where we don't know what jobs are going to be out there in the future, and we need to recruit for values as much as we do for competence. So that's something which I'm really excited about at the moment, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't even think of right now.
We did very well. I'll be honest. That was a good response for a man that wasn't prepared. Very good. So, well, hey, Peter, I really appreciate your time. I know it's been very kind of you to give me a window whilst you've literally only been allowed out of the house for about 48 hours, I think. So I'm very, grateful that you took that moment. Is there, as we look back through your career, I suppose, is there any one sort of proudest moment, proudest achievement that you're really, you're almost your sell on yourself, your elevator pitch? What do you think you're most pleased with so far? And I appreciate we've got a long way to go yet, career-wise, with someone like you. But
I hope so. Look, pivotal was that moment at Doosan where I got promoted twice in 3 months. I got promoted into the job at Doosan, and then I got promoted to my first job as a manager. I'm not going to say I was a very good manager, actually. I had a lot to learn, but one might look at one's career and think there were a couple of key moments. That was definitely one. Because if that hadn't happened, who knows when I'd have got that promotion into leadership? I don't know. It could have set my whole career back by, if I had stuck around for another 2 or 3 years, that could have set my whole career back for another 2 or 3 years, right? So that was a key moment. I think the thing I'm most proud of in my career are two things: building loyal teams where you've got that real sense of team spirit, and developing my teams to realize that, it sounds really cheesy, isn't it, to realize their career objectives. I love that, and I feel very proud about some of the successes that I've helped other people have. I hope to continue to do that in the team that I'm managing right now, and other teams that I manage in the future. And I guess the second thing is going to be just that external recognition that we were doing something that was noteworthy. I think that is what really feeds me. That's what keeps me going. And I've got a few sort of key friends and contacts in the industry who I regularly just sort of spar with, just to keep myself honest, and sort of, these guys, I know they're at the cutting edge, I know that they're ahead of what we're doing, but I just love to catch up with them, and see what we can do to catch up, or areas that we can really focus on, or things that we're doing really well that maybe we hadn't given ourselves credit for. I really enjoy kind of benchmarking myself in the industry, and I feel very proud when I feel like we're making progress. Yeah, I think they're the main things, and I guess also, making the jump to Dubai with my wife and 5 kids. I mean, honestly, Simon, I don't know. Now I can do anything. Having done that, it's not a question of stay out there for 3 years and then come back to the UK. I honestly don't know where I'll go next, because once you kind of sever those ties, it really opens up a world of possibility, and that's why I just can't recommend it highly enough to consider just making a bold move if those opportunities arise, particularly as the market in the UK might be a little bit depressed and opportunities might pop up elsewhere for someone with mature market experience. I just say go for it. Don't look back. It will definitely pay off.
Excellent. I mean, it's sound advice. I think that's, as you say, people are out there, and you've obviously created some great chances for yourself, but equally you've been bold and brave and taken a risk, and I'm delighted to see that things are working out so well.
Yeah, thanks, Simon, and thanks so much for your ongoing support, but also that key moment way back in, when was it, 2008? I think 2007, 2008. It was so important. So thank you for that.
Not at all, not at all. My pleasure, and it's great. I mean, for the benefit of people listening, I've known Peter a long time. He's a man I enjoy every single conversation with. It's always, it's been a pleasure to keep in touch. And once again, thanks a lot for your time. But I'll let you get back to work. You'll have to go back in the office and put your mask on, I'm afraid. But thanks for giving us some time today. And as always, we must keep in touch. But Peter Hogg from Schneider, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.